Thanks again for checking out another replica airguns video, and today we're going to do a tabletop review of the Walther PPKS. This is an Umarex product, and this is going back a few years for me, but this particular gun has been around for a bit, and it's one of the earlier blowback styled BB guns. And for me, I purchased this about 4 or 5 years ago. This is the one I purchased here along with the CP99 Compact. And they were really, those two guns were really the first guns that got me kind of interested in the replica guns. Now the reason I have two is I didn't want to do a review of just my nickel slotted one because it's been modded a little bit. You can see here it doesn't have the actual CO2 screw, the same style, and I'll explain that a little bit later. But let's go over a few things. Now if you haven't noticed, this is the Walther PPKS, and this style of gun was made famous by the James Bond movies, so it may look familiar to you for that reason. These guns are blowback CO2 BB guns. They shoot around just under 300 feet per second. They have 15 shot magazines. They're single action only. Now they're mostly metal. There's a few plastic components, but they're mostly metal guns. And they're made in Japan, which is kind of nice. So what I want to do is just quickly compare the modded and unmodded version just a little bit, just a few things that I've done. The most obvious thing that I've done here is I've changed the CO2 screw valve here a little bit, and all I really did was I just cut it shorter. Open up the sides here. All I really did was I just cut. Now this is an actual live CO2. There's CO2 in here because I just basically went out and shot on the target just to see what the accuracy was like. But you can see here we have the screw, and all I did on this one is I cut it short, and then I just basically, I'll show you what I did here. A little bit hard to see, it won't be totally in focus. And then I just used basically a hacksaw to put a groove in here so that I could tighten it with a regular slot screwdriver. I might have the wrong handles on here. Now internally, I did do another modification. This one I made full auto, and I did this. I don't really want to get into it. People ask me questions all the time. I do want to say I don't recommend doing the full auto mod because it is problematic. I've lost the actual firing pins out of these guns because they're just moving around so much. Parts fly off of them. If the C-clip doesn't go in properly, you could lose the firing pin, and then you're kind of stuck having to Mickey Mouse something in there. And also the other thing is if you don't get it just right, the gun becomes a runaway fully automatic gun. So it's really difficult to get it to essentially be an on-demand full auto. So what I mean by that is you pull the trigger, you release the trigger, it stops shooting. What happens is sometimes you get a runaway gun, which means if it starts shooting, it's not going to stop shooting until the last BB's gone and the slide stays back. So keep that in mind. I don't recommend modifying the gun. One other thing that I did do that I do recommend is you can take this little pin out, and you'll see that there's a pin right here. It's kind of hard to see, but there's a pin in here. You can just punch that out, and that allows you to remove the slide. And I'll show a field strip version of it in a bit, but it allows you to remove the slide. So just really quickly take a look at both sides of this gun. I did find that the nickel version, or the nickel one, the slide is nice and smooth. It's almost like polished. It's not as rough, whereas the blued version or the painted version, it's a little rougher. It's not quite as nicely finished. So the nickel slide one is really quite nice. Now another thing I really want to quickly show, people mention it all the time, is, well, let's take a look at, here's a blank version of the same gun, and you can see here that the magazine is quite different. So people say, oh, I don't like the screw, and I don't like the way that the actual length of the handle is a little longer. You can see that on the PPKS, the BB version, the handle's longer. It's because it has to fit a CO2 magazine in there. There's more going on than other things. So it's not exactly the same on the bottom, but you know, you can see that, now this is the blank gun version, but you can see that they're very similar, other than the length of the hammer and the way that the magazine is fed. Let's take a look at this gun and take a look at some of the features. Now this is not the safety here, so this is just molded into the actual slide. That's okay, you know, no big deal. The safety is actually on the other side, so this is your safety, and you know, it's not exactly what you'd find on the real gun, but that's okay. Then you have your ejection port here, which is nice. Back on safety. So I don't have any BBs in here, so the slide locks back when you have no BBs, so the last round you shoot, which is kind of neat. The trigger is really quite nice. It's very light. Because it's single action only, you're not trying to make the hammer go back when you're pulling the trigger. All you're doing is releasing the hammer, so it's a very lightweight. Now the magazine release is where you'd normally find it, and once the magazine is out, then the slide will go forward, okay? So, but here's the magazine. You know, it would be nice. I would have liked to have seen a metal magazine, but we're going back several years. They're starting to make more, they're starting to improve them a little bit more, and they're putting more metal magazines in some of the guns. That's kind of nice. Now, essentially, you have to hold this all the way down with your fingernail, and then what I do is, you know, is I kind of hold it down and put my finger there, and then I load the BBs in that way. And you can put 15 in here. You can get extra magazines and whatnot for it too. Here again is where you would put your CO2 in. Just basically it snaps in, and your CO2 goes in there. And it's quite easy to load. It's very easy to load and to screw in with this particular very wide lever here for screwing it in. If you do the modification, again, it's easy to do. You just need to use a tool. Now the sights are just basic fixed sights. Nothing wrong with them. They're not painted or anything because the real gun would have had painted sights. Not really a big deal. Now you can pull the hammer back manually, or you can rake it with the slide, right? Okay, we're going to take a look at the actual target that I shot at. It wasn't too bad. I mean, it's a blowback gun, so they do move around a little bit. It liked to group a little 1.5 inch patterns where most of them went in. And then I had one that was a little bit more actually on target. I was shooting most to the right. And then I had sort of one that straight off to the far right and one that straight off to the top center. So if these two hadn't straight off, I would have got a nice little grouping. I was actually pretty surprised. Oh, there's another one down here. So most of them landed within about 1.5 inches of each other, and then we had some strays. And you know, it could have been me. This was shot at 20 feet and just standing, freestanding, shooting about 1.5 seconds apart. You know, it's sort of dependent on the shooter, right? You might get better groupings than me. I'm going to quickly field strip this gun just so you can see how it takes down. So you just pull basically the trigger down, rest it to the side, then you just pull it back and up and forward. And it's really that simple, okay? So you have your spring, just like most guns. The slide's quite heavy on this gun. Okay, and it goes back exactly the same. All you have to do, the main thing is make sure the barrel lines up nicely. Make sure all your parts are in there. And make sure that make sure your trigger doesn't go back up, because if it goes up you're not going to get it in. And that's essentially it. Now in closing, really the benefits of this gun is it's a classic gun. If you like collecting replicas, it's kind of, you got to have this gun really. It's the James Bond gun. It's well made, it's made in Japan, it's mostly metal. It has a really nice blowback action, not too much, not too little. The trigger pull is excellent. It actually shoots pretty good. And at the end of the day, it's actually a fairly inexpensive gun. Well under $100, maybe even under $75 or even under $60, depending on where you buy it. I highly recommend you pick one of these up if you don't already have one. So if you like the replica guns, pick one of these up. As always, I have more written articles and sometimes more information on these products on my website. So make sure to come down and check my site out at replicaairguns.com.